Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to another episode. Woo! We are just rocking and rolling. We're going to keep this show popping and moving, and we couldn't do it without you, and we're greatly appreciative for all the love and support we've gotten on this channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, man, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, smash the like button. It really helps push these videos up, and in reality, that's exactly what we need, so more people get to see it, and more people get to enjoy this wonderful content that we bring to you on a daily basis. On this episode, this was a request from one of our subscribers. We're asking about chimneys. Now, I've talked about chimneys and I've talked about draft, but more specifically today, I'm going to get into a little bit of the science behind it and the importance of making sure your draft is where it needs to be for proper boiler operation. Now, if you guys aren't understanding, every single boiler has a breeching, or that's what we call it. You can call it a smoke pipe if I really want to dumb it down for you guys maybe who don't fully understand. But the flame goes inside the chamber, however many passes or wherever heat exchange is in that said boiler, it's going to pass through that, and then whatever gases are not being used in the combustion process are exhausted out just like a car. So it goes out of the smoke pipe, and in the buildings in New York City, it'll go into what we call the chimney stack, and that stack is going to be whatever the height of the building is plus whatever the allowance is for clearance at the top of that roof. Now, there are a lot of factors that go into good, bad, or indifferent draft. On our jobs, we have a lot of draft regulators. There are some jobs that have draft inducers. There are some jobs that operate from, they have like an automatic control that's reading the pressure inside the boiler, because we really want to have a positive pressure over fire. So in order to maintain that positive pressure over fire, there is a system that adjusts the rear boiler damper open and close to keep and maintain the pressure we want in the boiler. Because at the end of the day, whether the draft is great or not enough and all that, what matters most is what's happening inside the boiler. Typically for us, when I don't have a system like that and we're just purely working off a draft regulator, I'm looking for around a negative 0.04 draft, which is a negative draft, which is exactly what you need. It's going to draw the exhaust from the boiler, but it's not so excessive that under certain circumstances that can cause problems with the fire inside the chamber. Now, a lot of times it's the differential of, there's a few factors with chimney stacks that you have to be mindful of. One is a temperature differential. That heat tends to want to rise, so the hot temperatures from the boiler find its way to that chimney stack, and that alone will allow the temperature or the exhaust gases to rise up and exhaust out of the building. The other part is location of said chimney stack, right? Some buildings, it comes up through the middle of multiple buildings. Some buildings, or even in a private house, it might come up, there might be a tree there getting in the way of it, right? Sometimes it's wide open. Sometimes it's a beachfront property, right? There are a lot of factors, because what a lot of guys don't talk about in the industry, not only is draft important, but understanding where you are, where your location is, and how that might affect your draft. Now, I've had jobs that are right on the beach. And you have to imagine being on the South Shore of Long Island. At many times, the wind is very great. So they make different chimney caps and stuff, so it helps divert some of the wind, because the more wind I have blowing across, it creates a venturi also. So even though the heat in itself is going to rise out and exit out of the chimney stack, if I create a velocity across the top of it, it's also going to create a situation where I'm going to have excessive draft. So they do make caps. I'm not getting into caps and stuff here, but they do make diverter type caps that take the wind and kind of separate it around instead of it blowing right across the top, and that'll slow the velocity of the draft pulling through the boiler. Because on that particular job that I'm talking about, they're cast iron boilers, so it's a little bit harder to maintain a positive pressure inside the chamber, and we don't want to be pulling the flame right off the top, off the diffuser of the burner. Now, I've talked about that in previous videos. Hopefully you watched that video. If you haven't, it's definitely in here. Maybe I can have the editor drop a link so you can take a look at that as well. With that being said, though, there are a lot of factors that I look at when I'm inside of a boiler room, and if you have the proper combustion tools, you'll be able to check draft. Now, they do have old school tools that I used to have. I haven't had one in a while. I had an old timer give me one. I think I passed it down to somebody else. But basically, it was just a little square piece, and it had a little tube coming off the back. You used to screw it in, and then you could just slide it in. It would just give you an exact draft reading. That was more analog. Now everything is gone digital. But essentially, we're using the heat and the differentials of the temperatures outside, and then taking into account high and low pressure weather systems that are moving through your area also can affect. So that's where the draft regulator comes in, because when I need more draft, that regulator door might close. When I need a little less draft, that door might swing open. And the idea of it is to set it when you first install them. The hardest part is that there's cold days of the year and there's warm days of the year. I've always found that we're usually installing them or adjusting them during the warm temperatures, and not that it's inaccurate, it's kind of like not a perfect science, to be honest, but the best way to do it, in my opinion, is during the coldest days, because that warm air to cold air differential really creates an excessive draft. And so if I set it at that time, and then in the summertime when it's kind of warm and it's very humid and the air is a little heavier, it makes it a little bit more difficult for the draft to pull. But essentially, that's what a draft regulator is for. And once you set it, it's supposed to swing open or close as necessary for the system. Again, not a perfect science per se, but it's a helpful tool, and at times it does work. Sizing of the chimney also matters, right? You have to remember, especially in New York City, and I'm sure throughout the world, efficiencies, building tightness, so many things have changed over the years, and the sizing of the equipment has changed over the years, that the chimney stack from 50 years ago, which could have been 20, 30, 40 inches wide, doesn't need to be that wide anymore. And then vice versa, sometimes they were even smaller, but based on the size of my equipment and the calculations that are done by the chimney company, which I don't have in front of me right now, but it's not relevant to the conversation, I may need to size that thing a little bit bigger. So some of these chimney companies do have liners that they install that are like, I forgot the material that they use, but essentially they roll it down the stack and they're able to expand it out. So when I have a damaged liner, I can get the max out of the size. Because if you imagine sliding some kind of liner into the chimney that's there, there's only so many sizes that are going to fit. And then there's also discrepancies. You're talking about 6-7 story buildings, in some cases larger. So you have to be able to slide that thing down from the roof a lot of times down to the boiler room. But we're not talking about installation, but I'm just saying, again, you always hear me talk out loud, and I speak my mind to you based on my experiences. But you can certainly size these things incorrectly, right? You can size the piping, you can size what's coming out of the boiler incorrectly, and that can really cause a lot of headaches for you. So sizing is super important. Making sure that your chimney is clean and you're cleaning the chimney base. In New York City, as part of our annuals, we have to check the chimney bases and make sure they're clean and make sure there's no discrepancies inside, because we have a lot of old terracotta liners, and over time, between rainstorms, between the boilers leaking and steam going up the chimney stack, they become weaker over the years, and in some cases they've collapsed. And obviously, if I have a collapsed chimney stack, it will create issues for us in pulling the flue gases from the boiler up through the chimney. So it does serve many purposes, but essentially what we're looking for most is, do I have that negative pressure, right? If I need positive overfire, I gotta be putting my probe on the positive side of the damper. What do I have? So I'm checking that first, right? Because I gotta make sure I'm maintaining that positive 0.01, positive 0.02 overfire. And then on the opposite side of the damper coming out of the boiler, what do I have? Am I getting a negative pressure, and how negative is it? If I'm getting like a -4, to me that's excessive. Now I have to adjust the draft regulator. I'm really looking, like I said earlier, into that negative 0.04 range, negative 0.03 range, which is more than plenty, and it'll help sustain a nice fire and not affect my combustion whatsoever, at the same time creating safe operation for the boiler and making sure that the stack remains as hot as it needs to for elongated run times, and making sure everything is working as it's supposed to. So again, this is a very quick overview. You always hear me, I don't get into the numbers and the science per se, but I kind of did this time, right? There's a lot of factors you have to think about with exhausting a boiler. You have wind factors, you have locale factors, you have height of the chimney, you have the heat coming out of the boiler, you have the what are you doing over fire? Like, there's a lot of little things that you need to look at and you need to be mindful of. But essentially what we're doing is making sure that we're pulling all the exhaust out of all the non-used gases, whatever is not being mixed in the combustion process, and whatever isn't being absorbed by the boiler itself is eliminated out of the system, and it's done in a safe way that's not backing up into the system. This is why we also install spill switches on the breeching. So this way, if there's any discrepancies or there are any blockages in the line and the heat happens to protrude backwards as opposed to pulling out of the stack, that overheating inside where the draft regulator is has a sensor on the spill switch, and if that thing gets to a certain temperature, it trips and shuts the boiler off. So there are always safeties included. But with that being said, those are some things I might look at. Now, I've done that also on other videos, but I really just wanted to get into the chimney stack because it was asked of us. So I hope this was, as thorough as it could possibly be. If you have any further questions on this, please ask it below. But I don't want to get into too much in the weeds on this. There are many different videos, and draft does affect things differently, and that's videos that I want to talk about separately. This time, I just kind of wanted to get into the direct operation of how it might work. But again, making sure the sizing is correct, making sure that my fire is working properly, making sure that the sizing of the smoke pipe is correct and everything's correct there, and then you really shouldn't have any issues. But you got to check for any discrepancies at the roof as well, and making sure that there's no blockages or anything happening. And as long as everything is working the way it's supposed to, your boiler will also work as well as it's supposed to, and it'll thank you in the long run for making sure those things are operating properly. I hope you guys got something from this. Like I said, I don't put long videos. I'm not trying to bore you with talking. I try to give you as much facts as possible so you learn something from these videos. They don't have to be 30 minutes, half hour. I always feel like 10, 12, 13 minutes is a good spot to be, so that's where I stay. If you need some more in-depth analysis on this, or you want to hear more, please drop a comment below. If you want to just discuss it, drop a comment below. We appreciate the hell out of you guys. If you haven't already, like I said at the beginning of the video, subscribe to the channel, man. Smash that like button. It really helps us. I hope you guys keep having a great holiday season. Keep kicking ass. Keep building your business. Keep growing. We appreciate you. We love you. Have a great day. Peace.